We live in a pluralistic society that basically says man is the source of law and we get to determine what's right and wrong in a democratic sense, which we're not a democracy, but everybody, even conservatives will say over and over again, we're a democracy, we're a democracy. We're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic with an idea that rights come from God. They want us to believe we're a democracy because then all they have to do is persuade you through the media that everybody thinks we should do this. And good, loyal Americans will say, well, I believe in democracy, so I'm going to do it too. Like we the people are the source of law. But we're not the source of law. God is. And even Christians were often willing to tolerate a humanistic moral system. But we can't. Not as Christians, because God says, you shall have no other gods before me. That's God saying, I am your authority. I am the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. As Christians, Jesus says, I am the Lord thy God that delivered you from sin. I am your source of law and ethics and authority and rights. I am the source of truth, not the serpent. Not man. Rights don't come from man. The serpent says, you shall be as gods, declaring for yourselves what is good and evil. And God says, you shall have no other gods before me, right? And if a law system, this is just logical, if a law system tolerates an antithetical law system, so if Britain tolerates Sharia law is not going to tolerate whatever British law is temporarily founded upon. It's suicide. It's suicide. It's suicide for a nation to do that. If a nation says, sure, bring in everybody from whatever, we'll give them an equal voice at the table, and all of a sudden they're outnumbered because the Muslims are having 8 children per household, and the Brits are having, probably 1.2, right? It's going to be a generation, and they're going to be living in Londonistan. That's what's coming. So I say that because what this chapter is talking about here is God has given them more than a religious faith on how to get to heaven. God is giving them a total, complete life system. They've come out of Egypt. They're coming into the promised land. And God has warned them, if you go after their gods, all of these evils and curses will overtake you. And some of that will be God supernaturally bringing the Assyrians and the Babylonians, saying, I'm going to bring them along. And some of it is just inherently, if you forsake the God of liberty, you will have bondage. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is what? Freedom or liberty, depending on your translation. Liberty is an anomaly. It is a rare thing in history. It isn't just, it doesn't, good old George W. would say, I believe people in their heart just want to be free. That is not true. Slavery has a certain appeal because it says, I don't have to worry. Someone's going to take care of me, right? There's a certain security. And we always think of slaves on a plantation somewhere. Let me tell you something. Everybody living under the Soviet Union were slaves. My wife was born into slavery in communist Romania. They couldn't, they would kill the pig, the family pig a little before Christmas, and they'd hide it in the trunk and they'd sneak it back so that they would have some Christmas meat to eat because Grandma lived on a farm. And there's always a fear if we get pulled over, we're going to have a bribe to bribe off the official because you get in big trouble because the state says that's our pig. Pigs come from the state, right? That's a form of slavery. Liberty is an anomaly. So what God is saying here is, now he doesn't phrase it in this very, I'm basically bringing it to you. I'm touching on this from the standpoint of, look at the negatives of this. Really, God is to be honored and feared for his own sake. I'm just pointing out to you, when he's not, the tolerance that we are so akin to hearing makes this an offensive passage to us. Because we're like, what? Take the false prophet and put him to death? That's radical stuff. But you need to realize that our tolerance of evil is going to lead to much greater harm than obedience to God. And that sounds very un-American to some people. But when a law system tolerates a different law system, it's another Rushdoony quote: "The God of the source of law in any society is the God of that society." So who's the God of our society? Well, our society, in most parts, say, we the people. We the people. The courts have decided when life begins. The courts have decided you can have an abortion. The courts have decided we're going to take your property without your consent. The states have decided mandatory attendance laws in the schools. This has happened in the past. It was fought. The victory was won by some Amish people to begin with. And what all this is saying is that basically rights come from the state. That is a humanistic law order. And what God says is you're not to tolerate a humanistic law order.